If we only market based on what we can attribute into what the numbers tell us, we're going to lose. We need more gut marketing to know this should work. We believe this will work, and we use our gut and we do the thing, and the results will come.
All right, Lee, I saw an article, something big. I said, let's hop on. We got to talk about it because I think it's a signal of something huge in the B2B content world. And that is that, as you may know, obviously, LinkedIn's brand link expansion signals a video ad boom. LinkedIn's doubling down on video, introducing a revamped brand link program, which is basically a rebranding of its Wire program that includes creators alongside publishers. I mean, we're talking about a 20% increase in uploads, more than 35% more views year over year. And check this out, a 200% single quarter revenue surge. Now, why would we care? This is a major signal shift that signals, in my opinion, B2B video content on LinkedIn is now mainstream, scaling fast. You cannot avoid this reality if you are B2B and using LinkedIn.
So my question is, who wrote that article?
That was an article by Reuters.
So the reason I asked, because there has been a huge push on LinkedIn for video. This isn't the first time. Of course, they pushed it hard when video first was introduced on the platform. They pushed it again when they went vertical and allowed you to do square and vertical things. Now I've noticed a lot of people who are considered creators or influencers, some of them I know, have been getting invites to the LinkedIn offices and LinkedIn studios and doing videos, and they're doing lots of ads. And I've seen LinkedIn staff doing ads for video. But I noticed that those ads are very heavily targeted towards creating video for advertising, because that's what they are. That's how they get their money, right? So I'm curious to see if we see a true boost in LinkedIn video that's also organic and not just for advertising, because I'm on both sides of that. I mean, we do some advertising on LinkedIn and we also do organic, and typically we do organic first. If it works, then we boost it in paid. But I'm curious to see where that goes.
It seems to me that advertisers are going to go with what they believe works and captures people's attention. So if it captures people's attention for ads, I mean, if you're marketing your business, I mean, in a way, you're advertising your business. I know it's not exactly the same thing, but you're trying to get the attention of people who are in that channel and grab them with whatever your message is. So if advertisers are seeing that as a must-go destination, why wouldn't someone that's utilizing video content, for example, automatically say, this is a place I have to be, or if I am here, I need to do what the people who are putting money into that are doing?
Yeah, I agree, because it goes both ways. One, LinkedIn sees that video is working, so they're leaning in on it. And on the other side of the coin, they can put their thumb on the scale because they are the platform and they do sell. And so, luckily there is still a time when it's being pushed where organic reach on video is still real good. And they're probably letting it be really good now because they want to also lean into advertising. So now's a good time to create more video on LinkedIn. And you can watch out for the formats and the trends because, of course, you have your standard 16:9 wide. Then you have their new video feed, which is still rolling out. I mean, I have had it for a minute, but I know people who've had it a lot longer than I have, and some who don't have it yet. So it's obviously still in that rollout promotional phase, which tells me that it's good time to still push hard on creating more video from your business on a business platform like LinkedIn.
Now, here's a question. Do you think that the other places that you're putting those shorts, for example, vertical shorts are like LinkedIn often is in that feed. It's sort of partial to vertical shorts, right?
Well, I think they're still finding their way. LinkedIn is
Okay.
still, and they're not trying to be first. They're not going to lead on video, right? You let the TikToks do that, and then Instagram follows that, and YouTube follows that, and LinkedIn's following up the back. The safer route, the paid, the advertising, that route. So I noticed that given everybody's screen is a little bit different, on mine, I see more video that is of two types. One, it's in the video stream, which has typically trend video. So it'll be like, um, work-life balance. There'll be a whole stream of those. There'll be my favorite work buddy, a whole stream of those, or hacking the 9 to 5. They're always along these streams of influence or of a trend rather. And then the other video that I see most of is advertising. A lot of it in my algorithm is LinkedIn advertising about video. It's a bit meta. It's video about video about video. Um, but the video that I create for Content Monsta does do well. And the interesting thing is it does well despite some of the statistics. In other words, as we told everybody, we always talk about how the results you get from content period, especially even video, doesn't necessarily show in your statistics. One of the statistics I look at recently is how many profile views did I get as a result of a post or a video post, which is interesting because you may see one video post that has, thousands of views or impressions, but nobody viewed your profile, nobody clicked through to it, nobody hit your website. But then I'll see one that has fewer impressions and my target ICP or, ideal customer profile went to my profile, which is much more valuable to me than, you know, thousands of people who don't care to know more about me. So that's something I think it's important. And we always talk about metrics on our podcast, on our behind the scenes, in our articles. We need to know, it's important to know what metrics are important. And I think when you look at LinkedIn metrics, they're still getting their footing, and you see more in premium accounts than you do in non-premium accounts. You see different things for businesses versus individual. There's a lot to it.
I wonder if there will ever be a land in which business platforms, networking platforms and marketing platforms like LinkedIn are actually going to, I mean, I know there's a certain level of engagement in the algorithms, but that doesn't really help them sell stuff, right? They wanna sell what gets you in front of more people and gets results, but it's tough to figure out what your results are without you reporting in those results. And so the reason I bring that up is, you're talking about, yeah, numbers, downloads, views, it's all relative because you have 1,000,000 of them and no sales, and what good did it do you? Or you could have 100 of them and 60 sales, and man, you're ahead, right? And but LinkedIn doesn't know how the results have really impacted you except how many impressions you had. So I wonder if there'll ever be a land where there is a way to provide some level of feedback and drive it really as true B2B moving the needle for you as a company activity and as a platform. And it makes me think about, where are we led by the platform and its decisions and what it needs to do, and that's how we market? Or do we lead the platform based on what we know is happening for us? And it makes me think about YouTube as an example. Just saw a study that indicated that almost half of the people who consume podcasts on YouTube, which is a major platform for consuming podcasts, surprisingly, but it is. You can't ignore it. You have to be on it if you're seriously producing a podcast and want people to pay attention to it. But nearly half of the people who consume it on YouTube aren't watching it. They're listening to it.
Have you ever thought about doing a podcast for your business? And if you have, you probably have some questions, and we understand that because podcasting isn't for every business. That's why we've created a tool called podcastornot.com. If you go to podcastornot.com, you can take a quiz that gives you a full assessment of the strengths and weaknesses you may have in terms of if you're ready to start a podcast and how it can benefit your business. Now, we know podcasts are a great marketing tool and a great source of content for all businesses, but maybe you're not there yet. So take this assessment at podcastornot.com. We'll give you a full report that you can share with your team about are you ready and is a podcast a fit for your business. So go to podcastornot.com, take the quick quiz, and get a full assessment of should you start a podcast for your business. Back to the content. I want to come back to that. This is a great topic we can go on and
Okay,
on with. I
yeah.
want to come back to that. One more thing about LinkedIn before we leave LinkedIn and go to
Sorry,
YouTube.
yeah.
So on LinkedIn, as a content creator myself, I have to realize this is my opinion, and I think very strongly of it, that LinkedIn knows a lot more than they're going to tell us they know. And I'll tell you why. Let's suppose I post a video and it hits thousands of my ideal customer profile, right? That's valuable to me. But if I know that, I would never pay to reach those people. So it's to their advantage to not give me the statistics that say who I reached. If they say, well, Lee, you have 22,000 followers and you got 100 people who reacted or who got the impression, that gets me excited and go, wow, I got 100. What if I wanted to get 1,000? Well, Lee, pay us some money, you can get 1,000. Right?
Sure.
It makes sense to their business model, which tells me if they would withhold that information to get me to pay more, to get more exposure, it's literally called a boost, then that makes sense from their standpoint. And it also makes sense that I may be getting a lot more exposure than I know about. Why would they tell me? Why would they tell me I had a viral post? Every now and then,
Mm.
just enough to keep me engaged. But, I know people who have viral posts and they're flat for days and then a viral post. My guess is that more of them are viral than they know, but LinkedIn can't just give you everything. No platform can. Otherwise, you would never spend money with them. So, to those creating video, I can confidently say that you're probably getting a lot more exposure on your content than the platform's analytics are going to lead on that you are. And for that reason, for me personally, I keep creating content. I keep posting content because it does drive business that sometimes drives more business than what the statistics balance out to be. Like statistically, this shouldn't be working this well because wait a minute, LinkedIn said I only got 10 views, but yet I got customers from that, or I got 15 comments about it offline. The numbers don't work out. So I can tell you if you're creating video or any kind of content for LinkedIn, you're probably getting a lot more impressions than they're going to tell you because it doesn't make sense to their business model to do so.
On that note, I think we sometimes, like sheep, no matter how savvy the marketer or marketing team is, we're working with the signals we're being given, like on LinkedIn as an example. We have to be willing to do things that don't report into us, but we know that just by doing them, it expands our reach in the ways we can catch people's attention. For example, you mentioned a podcast, record a podcast. We talk with our clients about this all the time. You've got your download numbers, you've got your YouTube analytics. Then you can measure your website traffic, you can see your LinkedIn traffic, but what else are you doing? Are you taking a transcript of that and publishing an article that goes out to people? Are you putting a link in your email signature to a conversation? And even if they don't click on the link, the fact that the link's there tells them there was a conversation, and that affects how they think about you from a credibility standpoint. Are you sending someone a link to the video of you doing that interview with this big personality in your industry as a follow-up on a meeting that you had, and they don't even have to look at it, or if they do, even better, but that raises your credibility? How do you measure that? You can't measure the stats of that very easily. But so if I decide to do XYZ with LinkedIn, even if I pay for a boost or I do a certain amount of activity, and then I see the results because that's what they're willing to tell me the results are because it drives what their business is, I'm doing myself an incredible disservice by letting that decide what I do with that content or what content I create. I have to follow my own map. And
Yeah.
the feedback that I get from the platforms I deploy and employ can only be a piece of the information I base all that on. The rest has to be my own knowledge about my business and my willingness to do activity that doesn't report into me, but I know just by it existing, it drives things. And I
Yeah.
really believe, Lee, I respectfully to everybody out there, I think too many people miss this.
Yeah. I mean,
And yet
I
the
could tell you,
opportunity's there.
as a recovering marketing operations manager and performance marketer, I'm leaning more in right now on gut marketing because
Gut marketing, I love
gut
that.
marketing, because we can't analyze things the way we used to. Attribution doesn't exist the way it used to. I did a speech a few years back called Click to Close, where I claimed you could monitor the customer journey from the first click to the close of the deal, which was more possible then. It's almost impossible now. And so, if we only market based on what we can attribute into what the numbers tell us, we're going to lose. We need more gut marketing to know this should work. We believe this will work, and we use our gut and we do the thing, and the results will come. Those who do that will definitely outperform the performance marketers who won't move unless they have numbers to prove their actions.
Amen. We can't call that garkening, can we? No.
Nah, that
N
sounds worse. Sounds
Okay.
like something after a drinking binge. I think I
Yeah.
garketed.
That's
I
a
don't know.
celebrity couple name for it, right?
Yeah. If you're a marketer struggling to create content that's truly unique to your brand, here's the key. Your experts and executives are your most valuable content assets. Conversational content like videos and podcasts featuring your team stand out above all other content. So, instead of creating content that sounds just like your competition, start leveraging the unique voices inside your company. Thought leaders and authentic conversations build credibility and engagement. At Content Monsta, we specialize in remote content production, meaning we coach your people to be comfortable on camera, then we capture and produce high quality videos and podcasts featuring your team and customers. No need for expensive production crews, long production plans, or complex setups. Want to see how it works? Visit contentmonsta.com today to learn more. So YouTube, you mentioned YouTube. What was
Yeah,
that about?
YouTube. So the recent study, a company called Sounds Profitable, and they did an annual survey of everything podcasting. And one of the things they came up with, which I don't think is really that new information, but it really quantified it in more recent statistic, is that nearly half of the people who consume podcasts on one of the leading podcast consumption platforms, which is YouTube. You can't avoid it these days. Even if you don't have a video podcast, if you do an audio podcast, it's very easy to publish your podcast in video format with just an image or an image in a waveform, better than not having it there. And video is better if you can do video with your podcast. But no matter what it looks like and what the content is, the fact that it exists on YouTube, nearly half the people consuming it on YouTube, which is a big number, are not watching it. They're just listening to it, which to me means three things. And I'm really excited to hear what you have to say about it. One, it means sound matters. You can't throw away the sound that you've got going on in your podcast, because if people are just listening to it, that means you can't rely only on images. You can't say, "See this picture? It's cool, isn't it?" You have to say, "See this picture of a woman holding a flower?" In Iceland, that it matters. You have to think about that if you can. Secondly, it means that the quality of sound matters. Now, fortunately, there are a lot of tools out there now that can help almost anyone's sound better if you know how to use them or you work with a producing partner that knows how to use them. So that's good, but you still have to deploy them to be in a good starting position with the equipment you have or the way that you're recording and how you go through post-production. It matters. And the third thing, and the next thing is, it matters because I question how this will or should drive the way that YouTube thinks about podcasting's place on YouTube. And how will it say, people are not watching, they're listening. So how do we take advantage of this opportunity in what YouTube becomes? As podcasting, podcasting's dead. No, it's not. It's in my opinion, it's growing, to be honest with you, but it's certainly transforming.
Yeah.
And here's an example of the way that it's going back to its roots. It's doing the same thing it always did, but in a new place that you wouldn't have expected. So you can't ignore that. So how will that change YouTube, and how we have to keep our eye on that ball? And then the last thing is, when you're watching, you don't listen as closely, but when you're listening, you listen closer. So you have to really pay attention to everything you do when you have sound only. The way you behave, the sounds you make, and what you say matters too, because people are paying even more closely attention. And remember, I'm sorry, but this should be said. If you don't have body language and micro expressions and gesticulation and everything else that you see that's part of communication, and you only have the sound, you have to fill in that sound in a certain way. So my point is, having a casual conversation is great, but if you know that you've got people who are on a visual medium and they are listening to you only, it should be in your thinking process as you produce what you're doing for maximum engagement and results.
So I want to dig into that headline a bit because I'm very critical about statistics on a few levels. One, where did it come from?
Mhm.
Two, do they have a motivation to bend it one way or another? And three, how were the questions asked of the people that were polling?
Sure.
For example, you use the word consume and you use the word listen. That means something to the people given the poll, but it could be something different to those taking the poll. If I
Sure.
go back a few years ago, the debate was what was the most popular, I'm using my words very carefully here, the most popular podcast platform where people got their podcast. And when they did the poll, they asked people, like, where do you listen to podcasts? But what they didn't do was they didn't define what it meant to listen, because the person who, for example, watched Joe Rogan, that was their favorite podcast. They were
Mhm.
actually watching it on YouTube, but the pollster didn't ask them to clarify, were they watching it, were they listening to it? They may say,
Mm.
what is your favorite podcast and where do you get it, for example? To say
Yep.
where you get it doesn't say listen or consume. And what does consume mean? Does it mean watch or listen? So if they said consume, they would
Sure.
say YouTube. In that poll, YouTube came out on top as the top podcast destination. In a different poll at the same time, they said, what app do you listen to your podcast on?
Yep.
And Apple came out on top
Of course.
because of
Very
how the
interesting.
question was structured. And so they
Yeah.
both held the crown for years as the top destination for podcasts. Now we have to question that again because we know people are watching their podcast. Even on TV. TV is our own podcast, The Business of Marketing, is viewed more on TV than it is on any listening app. It's
That's hilarious.
viewed.
That's great.
So,
Wait, I got one for you.
uh-huh.
If you were to ask me, and I'm dead serious about this, if you were to ask me, what platform do you do the most, where do you listen to the most content, on what platform? You wanna know what my answer would be?
What?
It's very surprising. TikTok. Because, like, when I'm washing dishes or doing a chore, I've got TikTok on in the background, and I'll flip it, and then I'll listen to the TikTok while I'm washing the dishes or whatever. I'm not even watching it 'cause it may not even be anything to watch, to be honest with you. It's just a person talking, right? But no, I don't think most people would expect that to even come up in
Yeah,
that
you just added a
list,
whole new layer to the question of how who you're asking, because TikTok is a visual
right?
medium and you listen to it, which is ironic because let's say if I look at other people in my household, for example, they like to watch, even myself, I tend to get caught watching trending sounds. And so used to when this thing happened, I was like, why are you listening to that song over and over and over? Then I
Oh, right.
realized they're watching different videos with the same trending sound. So you hear the same 30 seconds of a song over and over and over, but it's a different clip,
Right.
which means that watching is the most important part. But the kind of content you consume, you can actually consume it by hearing it. So that lends right back to YouTube. Talk about YouTube again. So with YouTube, I'd love to know. I want to find that article and send it to me so I can read it deeper because
Mhm.
some of the I won't say the name of the company again, but they may have incentive to say that they can get more advertising on
Okay, that's fair.
listenable content. So I want to say, okay, are they biased to say? Because I know we subscribe to several newsletters, and they're
Right.
typically like some of them are podcast newsletters, and I notice they're always biased to how we sell advertising on podcast, which is not something that's big with us because most of our clients are businesses and they're not after advertising, they're after, reach for their own brand.
Sure.
So I have to say, you know what, that article, it's biased because it's from a company who sells advertising. But so in terms of YouTube, there's no doubt that viewership is up for podcasts on YouTube. And you got to also consider YouTube has two different streams. They have YouTube audio or YouTube
Yeah.
podcast, which is the audio version. Even if you post a video podcast, if you label it as a podcast, it also shows up on YouTube podcasts.
Right.
So you can still consume it listening. I don't know if they split that in that study.
Well, but here's the thing, Lee. I hear what you're saying and agree wholeheartedly, but I think it's still worth saying that whether the statistic is 34% or 20% or 18% or whatever, I think it's a signal, an example of us to say something is happening.
Mhm.
Something it cannot be ignored.
Yeah.
Unless it's literally they've kind of made it up and it's like 0.3% and it's insignificant. What this study or another study, but we have to be mindful of two things. One is content is being consumed in way more ways than I think our gut often tells us. And we
Yeah.
have to use our brain a little bit and say, wait a minute, as I produce this, or as I distribute it, or as I figure out where I want to pay to have it boosted, am I sure that I'm paying attention to everywhere that matters? And the second thing is when I'm producing the content, am I paying attention to the places that I'm putting it that will matter? As an example, like maybe I'm really producing an audio podcast. I'm not doing a video and I'm gonna put it on YouTube. But if I don't think about the thumbnail that's going to be used, I'm not thinking about it being a visual medium, and I have to get them to click on it first.
Yeah.
So as an example, so I'm not thinking about the media, I'm just thinking about the way it was produced. So we have to be always mindful about these things because the landscape is shifting under our feet, as evidenced by the LinkedIn bit that started our discussion to this LinkedIn YouTube trend.
And
Whatever it
notice
is,
they're both
it's
about
not.
video. I mean, recently, a
Yeah.
friend of mine who does a lot of research on content, I noticed the content was biased. The answers were biased to written text. Again, this is from someone who does websites, so it's more written text than anything else. But the way the questions were asked, their answers tend to lean to answers about text, while at the same time, we know video is not only trending upwards, but also is the source of some of the best text, especially when we're talking about AI search results. The most original content comes from conversations because we're going to say things that are unpredictable and new in conversation. So conversational content, which is best performed on video, because you mentioned earlier the nuances and the facial expressions, those
Sure.
things. Um, whether it be LinkedIn or YouTube, there's no doubt we know video is growing. Businesses can't avoid the need for video, and whatever your platform is, video is something you need to have in your arsenal for content. So I would say if you're trying to measure where you're at with your content, keep in mind that we have lagging indicators of what used to work and things are moving too fast to bet your business and to bet your exposure on what used to work. What we know and what my gut says and what I'm going to follow that I advise you to follow is my gut says video is the way to go because it can create so much other content. I mean, we can say this is just not anecdotal. We have clients who we produce podcasts for, and the goal isn't the podcast. We have a testimony we just received where their goal was the content because they start with the podcast, the video podcast. They get video clips, they get they get written stuff, social content, written articles, all these things come from that video. So whether your gut is to know that video will lead your content machine, or whether your gut is to know that regardless of the numbers, we can create more content and increase our footprint. Either way, video is one of the best places to start. And our gut says you don't want to miss out on video.